Hey, what's up, everybody? We're here for another episode of From the Gutter to Greatness. I have a phenomenal guest today, and we're going to be talking about God's gifts. God's gifts. This brother was gifted and is gifted. And so we're going to talk about his gifts because sometimes our gifts manifest in a way that you don't even know you have a gift, but other people know they have a gift from an early age. And then they hone that gift, they use their gifts, and they get great rewards from their gifts. This brother has had a tremendous and successful career. Yeah, and he's got a amazing story. So I can't wait to hear it today. So today we're going to talk to none other than Dr. Kevin Khao Cates, international producer. I'm gonna let him tell y'all who he is, what he does, and all that good stuff because I can't do it justice the way this brother could do it. But this is my man. This dude, he's always been a hundred since the day I've met him. So yeah, real good brother. It's trying to do everything he can. So we're gonna talk about his gifts today and God's gifts in general. So Khao, can you tell us who you are, what do you do, and why should anyone care? We'll get into your story, but just give us a little snippet and make sure you name drop too, brother, because you done did some things. Let's hear who you are, what do you do, and why should anybody care?
Man. First off, man, thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. And it's good seeing you and getting a chance to chop it up again.
Yes,
But
sir.
everybody who may not know, my name is Dr. Kevin Khao Cates. I'm a Grammy nominated multi platinum producer. I've been blessed to sell over 30 million records. I work with everyone from the likes of T.I. producing his Why You Want to Go and Do That to Rick Ross, Jay Z, Ludacris, Snoop Dogg, Lil Wayne, Nicki Minaj, Little Kim's. Oh man, the list goes on. Man, I lose count, man. Little babies, Gucci Man, you name it. I've been been blessed to work with so many different artists, man. And as well as that, you know, um, also founder of Bridge the Gap and Curriculum, which Bridge the Gap we'll get into, which is, as well as that, do so many other things from just on the entrepreneurship side, technology companies, you name it, film. I'm in the film very heavy. So we have a big film facility here in Atlanta. And, I rent out a lot of the movie equipment to some of the top movie houses. And also, just a whole lot of stuff, just
That's
making it
good,
happen.
brother. I got to get a cameo. I need to get in somebody's movie one day. I just want to be an extra in the background and look
And
happy to be there.
I
Oh
got
man, oh that's good stuff, man. So you have done so many things, man. And how old are you now? What where you at in
Man,
age?
my birthday was this weekend, so I just celebrated my
Happy birthday.
45th birthday this Saturday. So we had a good time here.
And that leads me into like where I'm going with this is because you're 45, and so for a 45-year-old, you have done and lived the life of what many aspire to, what many people would like to be doing or have done or have dreams and aspirations. And so, like, before we even get into the whole story, when did you realize that you had a gift? Because that's what we're talking about today, God's
Mhm.
gift. So when did you realize that you had a gift? Because it had to be early on. Because I know people who are 45 still working at at McDonald's, and that's not a knock or a bad thing on them. But you had a different gift and you utilized it. So when did you know?
It's funny. I knew when I was a super young, bro. I was probably 9, 10 years old. And I knew that I was going to do some amazing things. I always tell my mom how I'm going to end up saving the world and do some big things. And, music was always that thing that I was very passionate about. So I knew music was going to be one of the outlets to get there. And, I've been doing music since I was about 10 years old. So it was one of those things that where I remember telling my mom, I'm going to build a city one day and it's going to be like a downtown, but not downtown. And I just sit back and I forgot about that up until when we were walking on the grounds of our 80 acre lot we're about to build a city on. And then I remember, wow, I remember saying that as a child. So I don't know, man. It's been since day one, bro. It's been since
Right. So
day.
when you were young, were you into music heavily, or was it were you could you play instruments? What like that first sound, or what was it that attracted you to the music, or how did you know? Because I've always liked music, but I know I don't have any musical talent. So what made it different?
For me, the first thing I did was rapped. It was all about rapping for me. I think it would. I heard Big Daddy Kane's "Long Live the Kane" album, and
All right,
that
love that
started a
album.
whole thing for me of okay, I want to be that. And then after
All right.
this LL Cool J, I'm like, okay, I gotta do this, and it started there. And then as I was crafting those skills, it got into a point to where I then wanted to learn how to make beats because I knew what I wanted to rap to. And then that opened up a new gift. And I'm like, wow, I'm very good at production. So a lot of the other things just kind of unveiled as I, got started and got into it.
And we all have this gift and this talent, and something that God has given us, and so mine wasn't musical. And I've talked about on other episodes is that my gift is perseverance. So no matter how bad or how difficult things have gotten for me at different times, God has given me the ability to get through. And then when I get through, there's always been rewards at the other side. And so by fighting through, but the ability, like that's been his gift. Like I have been able to like that's my superpower, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I knew that was my superpower was perseverance. And so I didn't always like that superpower. If you ask me, I wanted my superpower. I wanted to be able to play in the NFL, or I wanted to be able to play in the NBA or something like that. I didn't ever think I was going to be a musician. I just knew that was never going to be it. I was a decent athlete. I was good. I wasn't great, but that wasn't what I wanted my superpower to be. Is what it is. But somehow you were just blessed at an early age, and that's just exceptional that you realized that. But tell us a little more about your gutter to greatness story. So I get everybody on here to tell us really the grimy, gritty details of where you came from, what it looked like, what it tastes like, what you was eating,
Right.
and how did you go from where you are to now getting ready to build an 80-acre city. Like you explained it, similar to Atlantic Station for those
Mhm.
who are familiar with the Atlanta area, which is a beautiful area, well developed area that there's all kinds of just amazing things that go on there. And so you're getting ready to do something similar like that. How did you go from where you were at to being somewhere like that?
Man, well, it starts in Montgomery, Alabama. Okay.
Okay.
I was born in Los Angeles, raised in Montgomery, Alabama, and it hadn't been anyone who made it big musically at that point. Period in our city, but I knew that I was going to make it one way or another. So what I started doing was I started like coming up with commercials and jingles for the radio station because I knew if anything, if that's the only way I can be heard, I'll do their morning show, their intros or whatever. And that's what me and my crew started doing. We had a rap group called Crumb Snatchers, and just a bunch of aspiring cats, man, in the city that just wanted to make it in music. And I think that kept us out of a lot of trouble in a lot of cases because music was that dream that we wanted to, eventually get to. And I can honestly tell you, I noticed earlier in the game that if I was going to make it, I would have to serve. And I know that sounds weird to some people, but it was like that was one of the things. I'm like, hey, well, when you think about it, if anybody comes to Alabama that's, I don't know, that's has some opportunity to help me out or any artists out, then they hear everybody saying they have talent. I'm like, well, what can I do to actually help them? So I began to create promo teams and was like, hey, I can actually get your music in our area, promote it here, there. And, and then I ended up working at the radio station while I was in high school and, became a DJ there, which once again, that was something I fell into because I was in the clubs before I was old enough to be in clubs. But I actually would go with my cousin well, my brother, and actually watch him DJ, and I would help him lift the crates and records and stuff. And one night he got extremely drunk, and I actually had to take over, and that was my first time ever DJing. And the program director watched me, and I didn't know he was watching. And then that next day, I came to intern at the station, and he was like, "You ready for your own mix show?" And I had a week to figure out how to actually DJ for real to start on the show. But so I was really doing a lot, and I knew if I was going to make it, I had to do more than just what my talent was. So I was like, the more I learn about the business, the more I can help others. And that's when I started DJing at the radio station. I negotiated a deal to where I was running a nightclub before I was old enough to be in one. I was like doing all these different things to just try to make stuff happen. And ended up getting our songs on the radio. And, I was thinking, okay, we're getting somewhere, but then we hit this glass ceiling where we're thinking we're being discovered because we're being heard, not realizing with the major labels, we weren't a major music market. So Alabama was put with Wyoming and other areas that,
right.
No matter how bright your light was, it wasn't getting their attention. And that's when I started having people say, well, if anybody was going to make it, it was going to be him. And I'll never forget one of my good friends, I went over his house and I overheard his mom arguing with him, saying, if you keep up with this music stuff, you're going to be just like KO, chasing a dream, doing nothing with his life. And she didn't know I was in the house, and I just kind of walked out, and I was crushed. I'm like, oh, man, like, is that how people look at me? I'm like, got to a point where I was like, either I'm going to start believing these people or I need to actually get out and make something happen. So at that point, I ended up saving up money, and I moved to Atlanta. I got up enough money to make sure I had a couple of months of rent, got me some furniture, a U-Haul, took off. And that's when the journey, a lot of the journey began of just going through things where when you say gutter, like those were some very trying times for me, to where I ended up finding a job, but the job, I did computer analyst type work. And, but at the same time, it was one of those things where I was working through a temp service that would take half my check pretty much for the job, and it wasn't enough to make ends meet. So I ended up losing my crib, living out of my truck, still going to work, getting there early, trying to clean up, wash up, and then didn't want nobody to, so no one would know what my situation was. But then also, I never told anyone back home, my mom or anybody, or no friends, because I didn't want to prove anyone right. Because I felt like there was a lot of people who were sitting back saying, okay, well, he'll be back, And I'm like, no, that's when I really realized my journey began, of really finding myself, And I tell people all the time, it was times I would be in the car, sleeping, it's cold, and I want to cut the heat on, but I knew if I did that, it would run all my gas out. Mm-hmm. It was those kind of moments that I feel define me, though, because where I would go to in peace was imagining times like this, where I can be doing a podcast and telling this story and being in another place. And that was the places I would have to go to at times to even get out of that. But make a long story short, I ended up going to the Guitar Center, where it's, a music store. I used to always go there and look at the equipment and imagine what I would have one day. And I met a gentleman there. He was with a girl, and he's from New York. And he was telling me, the girl kept talking to me and was like, he produces, you need to meet him. And I played him some music. And next thing you know, he was like, can you come to New York? I'm like, yeah. He's like, and then I'm on a plane. He flies me there, and I'm, at his house in Long Island with all this equipment and records. And I became a ghost producer before I knew what happened.
Right.
So I worked up under a very popular producer and did a lot of great records with him. And at that point, I knew, okay, it's time to move forward and do something that, where God wanted me to be even bigger than the place of being in the shadows. There were things that I was supposed to do. So I took, that next leap and ended up coming back and setting up a studio in Alabama with a partner of mine. And that's when things kind of That was around the time when everybody was starting record labels. Like Cash Money was out, Master P was doing his thing, and like every drug dealer wanted a record label at the time.
Right.
So it seemed like, people were buying beats from me left and right. And there was one guy who said he was getting T.I. on a record. And this is before T.I. was really, really known heavily. He was still signed with Arista with his first album. And
That's when T.I. was T.I., like back in
yeah,
with trap music, and that's like that's
yeah, like
that's
that was
T.I. I
even
like.
before trap music actually.
Okay.
That was like his first deal, and he
Right.
ended up getting dropped from the label at the time. But it was funny because just to rewind real quick, when I was working at that radio station, I would always help as many people as I could because I saw how no one showed love to independent artists. And back then, if you weren't on a major label, nobody wanted to hear your music. So I would pull records from this trash bin. We would put the independent artists in, and if I liked the artists, I would play them. And I met Jason Jeter at that time, and he was actually working for an independent label, and I actually kept his record played and kept him looking good with his company. So fast forward now back to where we are. So this one guy wanted me I was producing his whole album, and he got Lil Jon on and the East Side Boys on his album and other people, and he was like, I want to get T.I. He's like, can you negotiate it for me though? Because KO, I know the business and how to work it. I'm like, all right, cool. So we went to Atlanta. I sat with T.I. And then it's a long time ago because he was charging us $5,000 for the feature.
Yeah, because right now, what is probably like $500,000 for a feature,
It's
250.
up there. It's up there.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure it's a lot, right?
I talked him down to 4,500, right? So I'm thinking I done did something. And as I'm sitting there talking, he gave me the actual album, and I looked at the back of it, and I saw Jason Jeter's name on the back, and I'm like, I know a Jason Jeter. And come to find out, I was sitting there conversing with his manager, which was Jason Jeter, and we both realized at the same time, oh snap, KO. And it's like because we had a phone, we would always communicate on the phone and talk. Right. But that was my first time meeting him face to face, and I had no clue, and some time had passed. So when we got back together, it was on, and that's when he was telling me, look, man, we just got dropped from Arista. We're looking at starting our own label. And Jay was like, but I'm from New York. I'm used to walking artists in, but we got to go the independent route now. And I'm like, well, this is perfect. And I knew at that moment that was my time to serve. And I went all in, We started making stuff happen. I started producing for the other artists up under T.I. I was like reaching out to all my contacts in Alabama and helping them book shows. And we just keeping things moving and just doing my part, and then one thing led to another. And, we did what we had to do. And now, we 30 million records up and, doing a lot of cool things.
That's crazy because what I heard in there is the big pieces that I heard is that even though things didn't go well, you didn't quit. You went all in. You kind of worked to create your own reality. But I also heard while you were doing that, you believed that you should be helping people while you were doing it. And so by you giving back, it came back full circle to you. And a lot of this to me is I'm hoping that somebody listening is able to grasp that in their reality, that whatever they need to do, part of their changes is about others. So how do you help and serve others? How do you help and serve God? How do you also use God's gifts and not just let it go by the wayside? So I heard you kept playing with it. You kept playing with it until your gift grew and it grew into something that you could now say sold 30 million records worldwide, and I think that's just the opportunity for people to really hear differently, and hopefully how do they apply this to their lives, and so why do you think so many of our brothers are stuck though? So like, and everybody who I hear is successful, like they almost are following the same recipes, right? Like that good recipe that your mama's chicken, and if you share that recipe and everybody followed exactly, it might taste a little different, but it's going to come out close to the same. That's what success is looking like. But for you, why do you think that so many of our brothers out here are just stuck?
Man, I feel a lot of our brothers are stuck because of the lack of, put it this way, I mean, and I speak about this in Bridge the Gap as we get into that phase next, but I look at life as just like a game of life, like a video game, right? And as you're learning, and you're going through whatever a level, the earlier levels are easier, and the higher you get up, the harder they get. But as you stumble and you may lose all your man in the game or whatever, you don't give up. You hop back on and try to learn from where you messed up until you pass that level.
Right.
And I feel like after you beat that level, you're extremely excited to go on to the next level, even though it's going to be harder, but you're excited about that. And I feel like brothers who get stuck are brothers to where in that game of life where they may get complacent. I just feel like it's too hard, or I'll be like, sometimes people create their own paradise on that board and kind of get stuck and say, you know what? And I always say growth and comfort don't mix at all. So a lot of times when things get tough, they tend to not want to go through that fire. So they say, you know what, this is nice to settle right here. And I have all this and I can do this and that. And, that's some of the brothers that I meet who are the smartest brothers, but they're not in. Right. I'm like, for how smart you are, why aren't you here? And it's like, oh, you're not, because you didn't want to go through that fire, not knowing that fire actually refines you. That's what God really gets to work on you. But a lot of people get stuck in their comfort zone, and they get content with that.
So like, what did you used to do, like that used to be limiting to your potential? Because we all done did it before. Like we all have, whether it's our vices or whether it's like,
right.
Did you love the ladies? Did you love the liquor? Did you love the weed? Did you, or were you irresponsible? What was something what happened that limited your potential? And, talk about that, because everybody's in different spaces in their life. And so sometimes people can't identify with, they see this brother in here now and he's saying, oh, I work with T.I. and Jay-Z, but he ain't like me because I'm struggling,
Right.
But a lot of times they struggling because they struggling in their own minds. Right. So what did you do that limited your potential?
Like I say, I got many lives. I have many lives. Coming up, at one point, I despised, the dope game. I despised just the drug game, period, because I watched my sister, fall victim of, fighting with drugs and being an addict. I watched my father eventually struggle that same battle. And that was something I truly despised. So I stayed away from certain things. But I can honestly say one of my vices was, there's a line to where you want to help people and do things. But within that line, I feel it can get gray and it can get crossed. And at one point in my journey, before the T.I. part and before we actually connected, because I feel God held back. There was an area after I did that T.I. record and I was helping him, but I wasn't actually doing records for T.I. yet. You see what I'm saying? But
right.
I was working with Jason, but that was me serving. So there was no money being made at that point. And my dad had a title loan business, and that was going to be the thing that he had set up for, I guess, that for the family to have always be able to have something, I guess. And but I feel like when my dad did, fall victim pretty heavy on drugs, that went downhill. And when I came back to Alabama to check on things were really messed up. So I went into this mode of thinking I needed to save the day. And, I tried to save the business. I moved back in town. I set a studio up in the business so I could still do both. But at the same time, it was hard to make ends meet. And then I'll never forget, my mom was renting a place and the people who she was paying rent to wasn't paying the mortgage. So they were trying to put her out. And she had paid all her bills, and it got to a place of me actually falling victim to the very thing I hated most. And so I did some dealings and stuff, on that side and on the street side, and almost lost my life in the mix of that. You know what I mean? So, and it was all I was telling myself it was to save my family. So yeah, I could sell this, I can do this, but one thing I learned was, either God could use me to help save the world, or the enemy would love to get a hold of me to cause mass destruction. You know what I mean? And I went through an area to where I battled with that, and instead of surrendering, I would always see how I could fix it. You know,
Right.
then I started getting bigger and bigger on that side, and then more things started happening, and it was really one of those things to where it ended up at one point with a gun at the back of my head, with someone trying to take me out because I told them I didn't want to do it anymore. But I made so much money to them. You don't realize that if you're in that game and you're like, well, I'll just want to quit. There is no quitting, because now you're about to affect somebody's lifestyle that's making money off of the work you're doing, and they're not gonna be happy about that. And it almost costed me my life, but God was with me through that journey too. And I think after that component, it was a situation where I knew, all I could do was repent and say, you know what, God, it's in your hands. I'm trying to do your work, and that's not my place to do. And I let go. I surrendered everything. And after that, I went from having money to having to get a job. And I never forget, I was working with a partner of mine, and we had this cleaning company. I got in with them, and before I went back to that, I'll never forget, we had an account with a nice restaurant, and my workers didn't show up. So I was gonna get, I would have we could have lost the account. So I had to run over there. So I'm in there cleaning up the spot before everybody get there. And I'm in the bathroom, and I'm literally cleaning the toilets. And once some of the workers come in, and I hear them say, "Ko, that's you? Man, I love your music, man." And I'm sitting there like, okay, this is the most humbling moment ever. And then you could tell he wanted to say, "Bro, why are you cleaning the bathroom?" Like,
Right.
at that moment, bro, it was very humbling, and it was a thing to where I feel like, it was when I guess when God was like, okay, you're good now. Then I got a call from T.I., and he was like, yo, you've been doing beats for everybody on my team. When you gonna do mine? And I'm like, I never thought you'll ask. And then things accelerated quickly. So, I can honestly say one of my vices was, when you have a
Not
big
living in
heart.
your purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what it sounds like. Like you weren't living in your purpose, and you
Right.
were doing everything else except for what God's purpose was for you. And so, God's purpose for you obviously is for you to touch people through your music, but also now how do you branch off and continue to help people and do things that you do, but you were doing things outside of that purpose and was getting lost in it. And I hear that you had a desire to do stuff outside of the purpose, because you were helping people and you were putting your wants above God's wants. And
Right.
and that's kind of what I hear you saying, and I hear that it caused problems for you. So you're sitting there and the gun was to your head. You remember what you were thinking, how you felt? Do you remember? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. And so the guys, that was supplying me was more so upstate. And these guys got upset because I wanted to quit. So they were constantly trying to send people down. And, at that point, it was just a real big thing back and forth. And back then, we didn't have like Google to go look up somebody. So
Right.
they were really slick. There were some other artists that I knew that called me, and they were like, "Hey, this dude from Bad Boy wanted to sign us. Can you come meet him and, tell us if it's a good deal or not, or fill it out?" So I'm there, and I'm meeting with the guy with them. And he had his business card and everything, and but come to find out, he wasn't with Bad Boy. He was actually, they went through that whole play to get to me in the first place.
Right.
And so as I was leaving, I got in the car, and dude was like walking down too. And I got in the car, and every time I cranked my car up, I automatically put it in reverse, and I had my foot on the brake. And so I'm saying bye, I'm like, all right. And I saw the dude come in, and next thing you know, I'm like, I look back, and he had the gun in my head, and he starts talking. He's like, "Oh, you thought you was going to get away, blah, 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 blah." And at that point, everything's moving in slow motion, right?
Right. Like a movie,
And
like a bad movie.
Yeah. But I'm looking at everything, and then I'm like praying too, like, God, okay, this it? Is this it for me? I looked down and I remember the car was in reverse. So I lifted my hands up and then I hit the gas. But as I hit the gas, his hand and the gun fell in the act. It could have went off, but it fell in the car.
Right.
And that's when, everything, went left and different. But I mean, all I remember is praying and just things moving in slow motion. Like I had a lot of time. I was in this space where, you know, it's crazy
And
time.
and I bet you along that journey, you had the voice telling you to not do it and to stop and to do other
Absolutely.
things. And I bet you wasn't listening.
I
And
wasn't.
and they say a hard head make a soft behind, right? And then you're getting spanked because of it. And so obviously God wanted more for you because He allowed you to remove yourself from the situation and move
Right.
on. But it sounds like it was enough to get your attention because the money was more important. And even though you knew you had to get out of it, the money was keeping you in it, and that was more important than listening to what God is telling you. And so, and I'm translating for people out there because I know there's somebody out there that they're not listening. They're not
Mm-hmm.
listening, and they got a gift. God has
Right.
given them a gift. God has given them a superpower, and instead of them using it, they are not listening. And it
Mm-hmm.
sometimes is going. Why get hit over the head? Like why get hit over the head or get pistol whipped when by God when you could just listen?
Right.
You have when every day you wake up, you have a free will and a choice to listen. And so many of our brothers out here just don't they're putting those personal physical needs and wants, which I understand how important it is. I understand what it feels like to be hungry or not to have or to want and be damn near willing to do whatever it is to get it. Like I done been there. I done been in that gutter before,
Right.
but I also know that on the other side of it, when you're going to get through it, if you just stop back and listen and do what God wants you to, and you're going to transition, and it's going to be so much easier once you get through that fire.
Right.
After you go through those trials and tribulations, and but so you finally got it. Was there a person or was there people outside of that incident that really made you get it, or was that it for you?
That was it for me when that happened and when I gave it all to God, right? And I watched and I just went through the fire. And it was, it wasn't pleasant at all, but going through the fire, um, it was like I saw miracles happen. Because there was always this thing in the back of my mind of prior to that situation, there was one situation where some things got confiscated, right?
Right.
And this was one of those, and this is what kids mess up, I feel like, because this was one of those moves like the movie where everything goes wrong and you're like, I'm gonna do this one last thing and that's it. It was one of
Warning
those.
before destruction. Don't
Yeah.
don't, don't they say there comes warning before destruction?
Yep. I had one little batch left because things that went wrong, and the guy said, well, go pick this up from these college kids. And so I went and got it. And I made one play that was going to be the play that was going to get me out of it, take care of them, do everything, be done.
Right.
And I never forget the lady that I got it to that was out of town. She had something else going on, and there was a whole sting operation. And she showed up to a hotel, and everybody was police, the bellhops, everything. And so I get a call, and this is when I'm just meeting my wife now of 17, 18 years, but I was just with her and her parents, and we were going to a funeral of her uncles. So I'm in the car with them, and I get a call at 6 in the morning, and the lady's crying, and she's like, I'm like trying to play it off, and I'm like, is everything okay? She's like, no. And she actually mailed the product to the hotel, and they confiscated it. But the crazy lady put an Alabama return address on there. And I'm having to sit there with a straight face, like, if something happened, what makes you think it needs to be returned back, period? And I had to play it off. But I'm going to tell you, I cried at that funeral. And I didn't know her uncle, but I was like, oh Lord,
He was crying for a different reason.
it's over. It's over for me. But what I did do, like I say, that was prior to the other situation. Because
Right.
that's what made them really mad. Because then I really told them, look, I tried everything, I can't do anything. And that's the part people miss. They think, and I talk about this. You guys, when you're in the trap game, I talk to the artists I produce. I'm like, why don't y'all kick something real? Like, what you mean? I said, look, everything I hear is life's great. I'm trapping and life is great. I said, why are you not talking about when somebody fronts you some work on consignment and somebody gets busted and now you're on the hook for that money and these people want their money? And why aren't you telling these sides of the story? If you're going to talk about it, at least give someone who has no clue a fighting chance to say, I don't want to be in that situation.
Right.
And that's where I was at the moment. But where God shielded me now, fast forward, that was always lingering over my head as T.I. and everyone started working with me. And I'm producing records, and it was always in my head of, am I gonna get a knock on the door, God? And then I ended up getting a call from this lady years later. And now this is when I got, then sold, millions of records. And I got nervous when she called me because it took me back to a place that I wasn't that person anymore. And I was just like dancing around the conversation. I'm like, whatever happened with that? And she was like, oh, you'll never believe it. She said, the stuff that came in, when they went to test it to see, come to find out the college kids duped me and switched it out for regular pharmaceuticals. So there was no drugs in the stuff that was in that room that got confiscated. So that's nothing but God, because of all the times, and I was nervous, and that was the thing, and it was like there was nothing. It wasn't drugs.
Yeah, that's and that definitely is trying to get people's attention, and I think God tries to get our attention a lot. And as humans, we often replace the attention we're supposed to give with something we want and we desire, and it usually makes things go wrong or go differently. But it's interesting as you've transitioned. So as we transition and think about this, one of my favorite artists is going to be Hove. So what songs did you do with Hove? Now I got to ask this.
So with Hove, I did the record. It was actually a record with T.I. and Jay-Z together. It was called Watch What You Say to Me.
Okay.
So I did that record with Hove, and that was a monumental moment in hip hop for me when I got the call, that he was going through T.I.'s album, listening to records to see what he wanted to get on, and he heard my record and was like, "That's the one." And at that point, I got a call from actually Serena Williams called me, the tennis player. And she was like, yo, I just talked to Hove. He told me to tell you he just blessed the record. And then I was like, wow. And then I got the call from Jason and T.I. saying, yo, Hove just got on the joint. So that was a moment in hip hop to be able to say, yeah, I worked, I was able to do something. And we chopped it up in person a little after that, and it was just pretty cool. Because we had, I've known him before, but it was cool how, he was like, out of the records, when he heard my record and heard the KO tag, he's like, this is the one I want, So that was that record.
That's a special moment, to work with somebody who is considered one of the greatest of all time, and to be able to have that on your resume and that on the list, that must mean you started living in your purpose. You started living in your passion. You started doing what you're supposed to do. And, for that opportunity, what's crazy is, though, there's a lot of people, let's be real, that are never, no matter what their gift is, they're probably not going to be in a place where they get the chance to do some of those things, right? And so you've been blessed, and you've been touched, in a different way, like of elite status. Like I would think of you as an elite athlete or an elite movie star, or obviously as an elite producer, and things that like so many of our kids aspire to be what you are, and or a form of fashion of it. And if you had to give them a formula to get there, what does that formula look like? Like what a pinch of this, a pinch of that. Like how do they get there?
If I had to give a formula, man, I would say first off, if first off, you got to really map your plan out, lay out what you want to do, and I had this formula where I say you slow it up, you sort it out, you plan it out, you set your goals, make a move, and execute, and then you're on to your destination. So when I say you slow it up, it's like things be moving fast, and a lot of times that's where the enemy can catch us when we're in a rush and we're like, I just want to get there. And I feel like the society today makes everything so you expect stuff to happen instantly, and it's like
Right.
life in the process doesn't work that way. So if you're going to go through something and it's something you want to do, you have to set the tone and say, okay, to make it here, I already know it's going to be a process. So let me map my plan out, because at times that plan that I lay out of what I want to do is going to be the only rope I can hold on to when the smoke is so thick I can't see. And to stay focused, I have to go back and to my plan. After you've sorted it out, and to me, I tell them all the time. I mean, nowadays you could go Google anything. So once you lay your plan out, do some research on certain producers or certain people that are successful. See what they did. Learn. I mean, so you're compiling things so your plan is foolproof as you go in. And the next thing is, of course, relationships. Networking is everything. Being able to help find someone who's in a position that's ready to take off or has that talent and also has the character and the drive. That's very important, because there's a lot of talented people that don't make it because they don't have the drive, or they think I got the talent, that's all I need. But you find that right person and you're able to align with them and give your gifts to it, then that adds more fuel. And then you got more like-minded, energies moving forward where it needs to go. So that's where, that's what I would really say on that end, bro.
So I definitely think that they have to follow your advice, because you give some, for somebody, when somebody's successful, that's what I need people to listen. Listen to successful people, because at the end of the day, I know there's even times if I would have listened sooner, I might not have had to go through certain things, because you eliminate certain landmines, certain mine holes. If someone told you, hey, don't step there. If you step there, you're going to blow your leg off. You're going to probably not step there.
Right.
The problem is that too many of our brothers and even our sisters out here they're not listening, and they step in the landmines. But I'm hoping that, something that you're saying is tapping in and touching them. So I gotta ask. So you got your first large check, right? All right. Mm-hmm. So what'd you go get? Was it responsible, or was it crazy?
Well, it was.
Be honest.
It was kind of.
Come on now.
I'm gonna say, because the checks wasn't like what you really think. Like when I was getting my first checks, I went and started a barbershop. That was one thing. I started a business.
Okay.
I was also coming into the realm of actually getting ready to marry my wife, and we had our first kid on the way. So my mindset was different. You know what I mean? I didn't get the check when I was just free, and it was like I had life staring me in the face. So it came time to say, oh, okay, I can go get us a spot here, do this and do that.
So you were responsible.
I was responsible. Now, don't get me wrong. I did some stupid stuff too.
What's the dumbest thing you ever bought?
Got some jewelry and different things that watches that the cost of the house. Some I've done some frivolous spending as well. But yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. No, and everybody deserves to, if you're making it, to reward themselves. But I think it's also about understanding and not overspending or not spending more than what you have, and being responsible with it and not trying to keep up with folks. If you got it and you can do something that is rewarding to yourself or makes you happy, there's nothing wrong with that. Whether it's silly or not, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's when you don't have it and you're spending it and you're trying to keep up with folks to
Mhm.
do it. And that's, and you look at our community, often, we're there, be living in a broke down apartment, drive but have a BMW or a Benz, and have
Right.
some jewelry on, and have no investments, no life insurance, have no health insurance, have no, and like things that are sustainable. So when you get old, they don't have all that stuff. And those are the times of things that, I definitely want people to realize. But hey, if you got it, it's okay to spend it, but you got to get there. You got to walk before you crawl, and crawl before you run.
Right.
And it sounds like you went through the process and then finally did some responsible things. And so if you like today's artists, right?
Mhm.
So how do you feel about today's artists? Because I had on another episode, I had a
Mhm.
professional comedian. Brother's funny too. His name is Zach Johnson. He lives in Charlotte, and
Mhm.
he was talking about like how, even though the artists of today might not be our music taste, they still, we weren't, the music taste wasn't our parents' music taste, wasn't our grandparents' music taste. And I still argue that it's gotten even stupider. Like, we was talking about Pound Town, My Booty Holes Brown, like
Right. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
a bunch of stupidity in my mind. Not to say it's not catchy and all that other stuff, but
No, I get it.
how do you feel about today's artists? And then when you have to work with those artists, even though it might not be your thing, talk to
Well,
us.
the beautiful thing with me is I actually choose who I want to work with, right?
Right,
So there's a certain artist to where if I just won't work with. I don't care how huge they are. If it doesn't align with, before I put something out there, because I know what my production, what it'll do for a record, before I put the wrong thing out, I'll just decline doing it. And because in certain cases, all money ain't good money. You know what I
right,
mean? Don't get me wrong. Certain artists I'll work, I work with a lot of artists. I mean, I just actually put a whole album together, and I actually brought 50 of the biggest artists in hip hop and infused them into 15 tracks. So, I have NBA Youngboy, Yo Gotti, Lil Boosie, all these guys on one record. I got
yeah.
my West Coast record where I pulled Nipsey Hussle before he passed, 3 months before he passed, Nipsey, Problem, Game, Snoop, Mozzie, G Perico, E40, and Ice T on one record.
Oh
Like
wow,
I'm
that's
pulling,
crazy.
I'm doing like a DJ Khaled meets Quincy Jones on steroids, mixing legends with who has next. So I have respect for a lot of the artists, but the difference is almost like, but when they come, it's almost like how people know how to act when they come into a certain atmosphere. It's like, okay, let me straighten myself up because, like, so if you're gonna be on one of my beats, you're gonna have to rap. You're gonna have to. It's just certain elements like the part of being a producer and helping elevate a person and take them to another level. I think it's a big in this era though. Everybody's so sensitive and people can't take criticism, and then they want to call it you hating when really you're just trying to make sure that they're can better their craft. So I
Right.
mean, so yeah, that would be the thing I would say on that, bro. It's just, I mean, you can't. I
So
mean, what? Go ahead.
do you feel like today's generation, do you feel like they're influencing positive or negatively? And I asked this question, I'll put some context around it. Another thing that I often feel is, and I've often felt like this just about hip hop in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I love hip hop, and I listen to all the, from the conscious to ignorant stuff along, and I prefer the ignorant stuff most of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm able to differentiate the fantasy and the reality.
Absolutely.
And it's about trying to make sure that anyone around me, but see, what's happening is our kids are already living in these defunct circumstances or situations, and
Right.
then the way you think is how you act, the way you act is what you attract, and then you put it in your earbuds, and what you're hearing gets pushed into your soul and your spirit. And then
Mm-hmm.
these messages are repeating themselves to you over and over and over again. And then when you're going through it, it becomes a soundtrack for your life. I know there's been music that's helped me, and there's also been music that's influenced me to do things like enhance what I already wanted to do, which was something negative, right?
Right.
So how do you feel like it? Like it's where we at as a culture? Is it negative, positive, and what's your part in it?
I mean, I think it's extremely negative. It's a lot of negativity going on right now. I mean, but it's deeper. I mean, Ice Cube spoke a little bit on some of it, but it's real. Like, you have different entities now that understand the power of hip hop and music, that's now investing in certain artists that's willing to talk about certain components. You have the private owned prisons backing owners, backing certain labels and giving them a pot of money to where if that artist fits the bill of talking about something destructive, then they'll back that project. And that's why most artists may do an album and the A&Rs come back saying, well, do you have something more edgy? Can you make it more hood? Because they're trying to grab that pot of money because they know kids will get inspired and end up trying to do the stuff and go to jail. So it's a
That's
lot of
crazy.
that. And what I would say I've been doing about it is actually that's when I took time out in the height of my career and I started Bridge the Gap, which teaches character building, life skills. It teaches, patience, self-determination, how to deal with losing loved ones, not making excuses in life. But it's all these components to where anybody that's in the hood, that if they had a positive role model, a big brother, someone that would give them game, if they don't have that, I did it in as a book and actually created music for each chapter. So it's overturning the narrative of real life stuff that they need to hear, but it's meeting them where they are, but it's still jamming. It's not corny. You know what I mean? It's just it's putting things in perspective the way it needs to be. And I feel like it's our responsibility to do that. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And
Those
definitely.
things.
And you led me into asking you about those things. And I definitely, because I know I've seen the curriculum, and actually I think you're working with one of my guys, Dr. Walter Milton,
Yep,
who has Black History 365. And
absolutely.
shout out to Dr. Milton. You got to get him on here at some point in time. He's
Absolutely.
doing big things, and they have put history black and made it all Black history, but
Right.
also in a way that everyone could understand it, but chronicalizing history in a way that it doesn't leave out the Blackness that happens in the history. And I know that you have attached on with some of your curriculum, your cool curriculum, and been able to do some things with him. And it's got to be refreshing or changing when kids have able to hear that or function. What have you heard that like teachers or schools have been able to do with this? Have you heard any good feedback from it?
Man, I've heard not just feedback from the teachers, but students, and then with BH 365, absolutely too, because what we did was I took the entire book and made music for every chapter. So we've got families. It's like, look, we just ride in the car with our kids and let them learn the entire Black history from ancient Africa to current times through the music. That they calling it like Hamilton on steroids, like just crazy. So I'm hearing good things on that. Of course, with curriculum, it's the numbers are speaking for themselves. As schools that has it, the grade point averages are going up. We've taken one of the third lowest schools in Georgia, actually, and now after 3 years of using our platform, it's the third highest in math and English. And that's with the cohort chart, which for the educators know those numbers don't lie. They're nationally laid out. So, we've been able to get real data showing an impact of, making a difference amongst our youth.
Now, definitely, we're gonna have to figure out how to get that over here in New York. I work with 25 schools in New York, and
Wow.
25 charter schools here in Rochester. So I don't know how familiar I was in Albany, New York. I'm in Rochester. Rochester, third poorest city in the country, highest murder rates per capita in New York State, highest car thefts right now in the country. Lowest graduation rates for Black males. Last time they produced, I think 9%. The school
Mm.
district 646 out of 646, and so I'm working with the charter schools here to try to help them. One of our main focuses is putting more educators of color into the schools, but also working with teachers and making sure that they're prepared adequately, but also supporting the schools to get results and some funding and equitable, trying to close those gaps, man. So we definitely going to have to connect on that. What else do you have going on currently? And anything that you want to shout out, that you got any projects or anything you got going on currently?
Right now, like we say, we have a course curriculum, and that's the K through 12, where I produced over 600 songs that math, science, social studies, ELA, everything you learn in school, you can go there and look up the song and the video and actually help meet you where you are on the learning side. Of course, Bridge the Gap, that's for social and emotional, and Megan Good and myself actually teaches that via video, and that's been amazing. Then we have Kool AR, which is the textbooks for the little kids, so where they aim the phone at it and the characters come to life and dance on top of the book. And we got 3-year-olds doing their timetables off of this platform. And, as well as that, of course, my biggest thing now is just providing jobs and figuring out ways to help our youth. After some of the youth that I've helped came back like, hey, I know what to do now, but how do I make money? My mom's on crack. I don't know my dad, and I didn't have an answer for it. So now, I've started a trucking company where I've helped kids get their CDLs. I'm putting them to work. We have training on the film side where we're teaching them lighting, camera operating, grip, so we can get them jobs here in Atlanta on the film side. I own some spas, so we get, young ladies becoming estheticians and getting them to work, and just trying to do my part, on that side. And of course, now, we're building Town Center at Mansa Park, we bought Old National Park right on Old National near the airport, and we're building, it's 86 acres. We're building a whole city over there, and just being blessed, man, to just spread from all different areas, man, and just do my part, man.
No, well, I thank you for what you're doing. I also thank you, as I picked up the phone, I hit you and messaged you. You got right back to me, man. And you was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. And I love that about you, because you're here, you're willing to speak to the audience, you're speaking to people. And I really hope something that is said resonates, and that they're able to see themselves in you and see that, that they have had similar gutters that you've had and similar struggles, but have decided to do something different. And you've lived with the plan and in God's gifts, and in those gifts, has made it so that you have abundance. And in those resources, now you're able to share and help other people. And so, that kind of, thank you for coming on, man, because there's a lot of brothers that have told me that I've been rocking with, that have told me, oh, I'm not coming on unless I'm getting paid to do that. Or, my thing is, this is an opportunity to really maybe affect or touch somebody. And the fact that you did, I appreciate that, man. So I always close with like a mindfulness minute. And so as I move to my mindfulness minute, I think what I heard today was a brother who is living in his purpose and his passion. And it seems like the themes just keep being similar. They keep coming on. And it's all about, if you want and you have God's gifts, you got to live in it. You got to work hard for it. You got to do what it is. But then you got to listen. And you got to listen to what God wants for you. And then the big thing that I heard about this is service. It's give back to others. Continue to give back, no matter how big you get. Don't forget to give back to somebody else. Don't forget to look back to the people who haven't made it yet and see how you help them. How can you influence their life? Because that's part of what God wants for us. And that's part of what keeps his blessings flowing for us, is to continue to give back and be a servant and be of service. And the fact is that, yes, we have these gifts, but we can lose them at any time. But if you help instill seeds in others, these gifts will be around forever. They'll be internalized. They'll be a shrine, because you'll always have people that will have said that you've been able to help them grow their gifts. So help someone else grow their gifts from God. And if you want to continue to grow your gift, I ask you to keep listening from the gutter to greatness, because we're going to keep bringing you the people, the heat, and we're going to keep working on trying to move from that gutter to greatness. So until next time, I ask you all to stay tuned and stay blessed, and move from your gutter to your greatness.
That's it for today's episode. So head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener that posts a review on iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing for a $25,000 private epic VIP day with Dr. Miller himself. Be sure to head on over to guttertogreatness.com and pick up a free copy of Dr. Miller's gift, and join us on the next episode.